What's the most physical pain you've ever been? Had a tooth drilled and pulled out piece by piece. One of the roots of the tooth that was being removed was stuck under the root of a healthy tooth. The dentist stopped and told me to go to an emergency surgeon, where I waited in the lobby for an hour and a half for him to finish up with someone else. The numbing from the previous dentist was long gone and I was stuck waiting with a drilled hole in my mouth and exposed root waiting. I can't even think about that memory too long before I get sick to my stomach. Yeah, I definitely never went back. That was last appointment. To be fair, the surgeon said that the roots were really tangled and it was a good thing he didn't keep trying on his own. Maybe I don't understand x-rays well enough, but they took a bunch before starting, so I assumed they knew what they were getting themselves into. My worst pain ever story is also about teeth. I had a wisdom tooth pulled in prison. The toothbrushes they give you are super short, so it's harder to stab someone with them if you file one end to a point. So my already damaged wisdom tooth on the bottom needed to be pulled. It took months to finally get an appointment with the prison dentist. When I went in, I told him what the problem was. He said they'd pull it and gave me a form to sign, basically releasing them from all liability. I laid back in the chair and then someone came over and held me down. The dentist pried my mouth open, and took a tool and literally jammed it under my wisdom tooth in one swift motion. He then yanked it up in another swift motion, basically ripping my wisdom tooth out in the most violent possible way. No numbing shots or even any fucking oral. The pain was literally blinding. My ears started ringing and I just saw white for several seconds. They then just stood me up, pushed me out of the room, and the guard there gave me a small square of gauze and told me I could get some low-strength ibuprofen from commissary next week if I had any money on my books. My jaw and mouth were sore as fuck for like a week. I also had a molar that was infected and abscessed at one point while I was locked up. They wouldn't do anything for me and the ibuprofen wasn't cutting it. So I traded some stamps to a guy from laundry for a safety pin and traded some more stamps for a lighter. Sat in my bunk one night and heated up the end of the safety pin to sterilize it and then dug it into my gum below the infected tooth and dug around until I managed to drain the abscess. Hurt like fuck, but my tooth felt so much better afterward. I had pectus excavatum. In a nutshell, my sternum did not grow out with the rest of my ribcage, and my chest appeared to cave in. This is a birth condition. When I was 15, I had a NUS procedure to correct it. I had a metal rod placed and my sternum was cranked into place. The rod was fixed to allow the sternum to grow into the proper position. I grossly simplified these two things, but it's just for context. Specifics aren't relevant. Was in the hospital for a week. My chest was inflamed as hell. Eating was sometimes difficult but not unbearable, and moving around was a bit uncomfortable. Nothing really painful happened at the hospital, oddly enough. It was the day I went home. I had not produced a BM since the procedure. 1 week plus. The doctors and my parents tried everything from a suppository to a full-blown enema and nothing. I get home and my dad starts pumping me full of prune juice. That evening, we are eating dinner, and my dad keeps telling me to drink more prune juice. I tell him that I'm full and not feeling all that good. Dad pushes me to keep drinking more. I relent and keep drinking, and then it hits. I beeline to my bathroom to try and puke. But my chest is still inflamed and my body simply could not throw it up. Whatever it was that was coming up was fighting against a swollen chest cavity, and it felt like I was being ripped open from the stomach up. At the same time, I couldn't breathe. I was basically drowning in my own vomit. I genuinely felt like I was going to die and I was powerless to stop it. For what seemed like minutes, I finally vomited it out. I don't even know what it was, and I didn't care. I was laid out on my bathroom floor wailing in pain to the point that it drove my siblings out of the house. After it was all over, my dad helps me off the floor, hugs me, and says, "I'm so sorry, son." It's one of only 2 times in my life that I saw my father cry. The other was when his mother died, and in an instance that can only be described as ... because of course, the BM occurs a few hours later. I had this procedure as well. My first time I accidentally sneezed still haunts me. I can't imagine throwing up. One of the first nights recovering in the hospital, I was all alone and in a lot of pain. I triggered my epidural for more drugs direct to my spine, but instead of relieving the pain, it got a million times worse and my whole chest started to clench around the newly inserted bar that was impaling my chest. I tried asking the nurse for more painkillers but they couldn't because they didn't have the authority to prescribe. So I just wept alone. Eventually I was allowed to trigger the epidural machine again, and over hours the pain gradually subsided. My bar stayed in for 2 years until I started getting a terrible stinging burning pain under my arm. When the surgeon removed the bar, he said my body had begun to grow bone around it. I'm surprised I had to scroll this far. I had it when I was 13 and I remember just rocking back and forth in my bed sobbing. It was nighttime so I didn't want to disturb my parents but it finally got to the point I had to. My mom drove me to the ER and the doctor said, "Oh, it's just a bad stomachache, here's some antacid." I said no way, took the medicine, and as they pulled the curtain back to let me go I vomited all over the floor. They did a few more tests and then rushed me into surgery for an emergency appendectomy. I hear ya. I had 2 months of pain where they told me it was IBS. Then it ruptured and I was rushed to surgery. Worst pain was a couple days after surgery. They had a 1-inch diameter tube with little holes all along it inserted in my lower abdomen to suck out the poison inside of me. When the nurse removed it, she put one hand on my chest and, grabbing the tube in her other fist, she ripped it out of me like she was trying to start a stubborn lawnmower. I have never made an involuntary noise like that before and I hope never to again. Yeah. I spent 5 years trying to get some doctor to take an interest in figuring out why I was dangerously underweight, threw up every time I ate, had almost constant stomach pain, and was losing my hair. According to all the doctors I saw, I was just stressed. One doc told me to try to relax and drink green tea. Finally I found a doctor who could be arsed to do some blood tests, and it turns out I have celiac disease. I have a sneaking suspicion that the fact that I was a woman in my mid-late 20s while all this was going on had something to do with all the half-assed diagnoses I received. I also think it probably wasn't a coincidence that all the doctors I saw before the last one were men over 50. The doc who took me seriously, meanwhile, was a woman in her 30s. Oh my god, I had one above my front teeth when I was 10. I kept telling my mother I was in pain. She thought it was growing pains and insisted I was just being dramatic, and we treated it with Oragel for almost a month. It wasn't until my face started to disfigure from the swelling, infection that she finally brought me to get help. I ended up losing 2 of my front teeth and having to go through extensive surgery to repair the damage it did to the front of my skull. Not a good time. I had a really bad infected upper middle tooth, and for like 4 days I groaned in pain because I didn't have dental insurance. I finally found a dentist to at least cray my race to see how bad the infection was, and he immediately let me set up a payment plan and put me on antibiotics pills and an antibiotic shot. 2 days later I went in and had the tooth root canaled because it was about gone anyways from decay. Needless to say I went and bought new toothbrushes, toothpaste and a water flosser, and brush a lot. Bad memory. I ended up breaking my tooth in half while eating chipotle. About lost my fucking shit, so I made an appointment at a dentist office that was open on the weekends. I went to the dentist office and their confidence comforted me. "Oh yeah, we will just fill it in and then that'll be $400. Okay sweet." Huh, not so sweet. The pain never went away. It would slowly grow. I couldn't eat anything or even drink anything cold. The pain grew to where I couldn't move my jaw and tears would just come out as the shocks of pain would continue. Went back to the dentist I went to, and long story short, when they filled in my tooth, They filled it right on top of a fucking nerve, and not only that, but it also caused an infection. The dentist who told me said, "Man, I don't know why they would do that." Then proceeded to tell me that it will be $2,800 to get it fixed. So I said fuck that, left in horrible pain, took the stupid prescription they offered me, had my parents go get it from the pharmacy because I was basically dying in bed, blacking out from the pain. The pain medicine was love. No more pain. Also great. Next day went to a different dentist. They fixed me up, gave me a root canal, and boom bam, all better aside from the minor lockjaw for 2 hours from those bite guard things, lol, all over Chipotle, and I had it tonight for dinner. I had an extra canal they missed. Years later a shadow is seen and they redo the procedure and find the canal by opening it. However, an emergency case was incoming, so it was temp sealed for later when they did the new crown. By the next morning I was in blinding agony on their doorstep, prescribed me a narcotic, and I had to drive 20 miles to their other office for an emergency procedure. Heavy antibiotics and drugs. I felt a bit better, except ever had a sprained jaw? Not the same as nerve pain, but some get sucked in a different way. That was the week from hell, to say the least. This is exactly what happened to me. I was in so much pain. I felt my tooth throbbing and the abscess came through the side. It was so painful. Went to the dentist and he gets me numbed up. The pain is so bad that I'm laughing. Then he gets the drill going and a geyser of blood and pus came shooting out. The relief was almost like an orgasm. I just felt everything lift of me and I think I passed out from it. I've had 2 of those, on back-to-back Christmas visits to my in-laws. The second year one was taking hydromorph tablets every 12 hours and almost drinking a bottle of liquid Oragel. The first morning the dentist was open after Christmas, I was waiting outside when they opened the doors and was in a chair within 10 minutes. Guy asked if I wants to try antibiotics to save the tooth. I said, get this thing out of my face now. Pure relief, lol. Oh hey, I had one of those on my asshole. Had to get it lanced multiple times, one of which I was awake for, and the numbing didn't work very well due to infection, so I felt an insane amount of pain for about 20 minutes straight while he operated on my asshole, sewed a rubber tube to it for draining, while I lay on the table shaking uncontrollably and sweating bullets. Taking shit sucked. Eventually they decided to just put me under and do the full operation and get it done. Turns out there was a fistula that needed to be dealt with as well. Super fun. _perianal abscess was the name of the particular issue. A few years ago I randomly got pain circling my abdomen around my ribs. It had me screaming on the floor in tears while wrapping my arms around my middle. It came on so suddenly and my brother, who was with me, had no idea what was happening. He rang 999 and they sent a paramedic. By the time the paramedic had arrived, maybe 15-20 minutes later, it had already started to subside. The paramedic couldn't figure it out, so I ended up going to the hospital. After multiple tests no one could give me an answer to why I just suddenly had such agonizing pain. To this day it's the worst pain I've ever felt and I don't even know what triggered it. I had something similar. Woke up around 4 a.m. with a horrible, searing pain on my right side, like inside my ribcage. Felt like the worst side cramp I ever felt in my life. It hurt so badly that I could hardly actually breathe. BC breathing aggravated the spot. Somehow managed to get myself to the Minute Clinic down the road right when they opened at 7 a.m. Spent my time lying in agony in my bed up until then. Pretty sure the pain was so bad I cried a bit too. Minute Clinic immediately wanted to send me to the hospital. I was in no condition to drive myself there, so I found my only friend with a car awake at 7:15 in the morning and I spent the day in the hospital. Did a bunch of tests but nothing came back conclusive, so they told me they thought I had pleurisy, which is an inflammation of the lining of the lungs. I still to this day don't really think that's what I had. I still think it must have been something potentially gallbladder related. I have cancer. On chemo I have to take these bone marrow booster injections. They cause bone pain. The first time it happened I thought I was dying. I swear I could feel every vertebrae. My ribs had toothache. It felt like I had rodents in my bones trying to gnaw their way out. I now take Oramorph to counteract the pain. It's bearable then. Fucking cancer. Edit. I should point out I've had open abdominal surgery, broken bones, had stitches, injuries and dislocations. I have had peritonitis and liver surgery. This is worse than all of them, though the open abdominal surgery is a close second. The first time my dad had a kidney stone my mom drove him to the hospital. I was in the back seat, maybe 10 years old. My dad kept trying to open his door and presumably jump out of the car. My mom kept locking the door back as soon as he would unlock it. He kept saying, "Just let me fall out, it will knock me out so I won't be in pain anymore." My mom was doing like 70 miles per hour, so it would have definitely done more than just knock him out. Had to call my mom and drive me to a NER at 3 a.m. I had been puking from the pain and abdominal contractions. They said it sounded like a kidney stone, but before they gave any pain medication I had to give a urine sample to make sure. Also, because of all the rampant drug abuse in Seattle, I snapped at them. I am 35 and had to call my mom to drive me here at 3 a.m. because it feels like I've been stabbed in the lower back, and then a 300-pound man with soccer cleats decided to tap dance on my groin. And you think I'm going to be able to pee? I had an 8mm kidney stone for my entire pregnancy. We couldn't see it because my little pebble was in the way. It caused all sorts of complications, not the least of which was blocking the epidural from being effective. 5 hours of active, deep breath, now push labor, which occurred at 8 centimeters dilated instead of 10. We had to vacuum him out because I couldn't continue and he was too far in the birth canal for a C-section, and I ended up with a 3rd-degree tear from stent to stern. 6 months later I had surgery to blast the stone to pieces. I don't know for sure which one hurt more, but the labor ended in a baby, so I know which one I'd rather do again. I've had about 25 kidney stones in my life. They started at 28 and I'm now 37. Some just cause minor stomach discomfort and pass with a sharp pinch a few days later. Others just start as a dull ache and then proceed to build and build, until it turns into agonizing jolts of pain that get longer and longer. The hospital won't do anything unless the stone is over a certain size, so you end up there just for pain management. I get them so often I just drink tons of water and tough it out. It is not easy. I've puked from pain and wished I would pass out. I remember one year one got a stone in the middle of a blizzard. I was in agony and my wife begged me to let her drive me to the hospital. I argued for a while because I didn't want her driving in bad weather, but I knew it was only going to get worse out. As we neared the hospital, someone had plowed snow into the road. Her car got stuck, and I didn't want her in danger getting out, so I got out and pushed us free. Then we headed up the hill before the hospital and her car couldn't make it. I got out again, pushing the car while vomiting. I just didn't have the strength to get her up the hill enough, so she slowly backed down to a lower lot. As we sat there, a shuttle came that transported doctors to the hospital. I asked in the most desperate way if he could give us a ride. He agreed. When I finally got the morphine at the hospital, it was the best I've ever felt in my life. Kidney stones suck. Good thing you went to the ER. I have a family member who deals with chronic kidney stones. They can pass as many as 4 a month. For most kidney stones the solution is pain management and just letting them pass, so they have worked out a pain management system with their nephrologist, kidney doctor, to deal with it at home. Because they pass so many kidney stones, they didn't realize there was a problem until they had gone septic. They had a 12mm stone blocking their urinary tract, and had been for about a week. 2018. I was supposed to get a spinal, but apparently after they dosed me with a sedative, amnesiac, I decided not to let anyone near my spine, so they just knocked me out instead. Had to have the same surgery on the other side a few months later and did get the spinal, which made for a better post-op, but the flip side was that I woke up during the surgery and the nurse had to lean on my chest to keep me from trying to get up off the table, which I'm sure would have been disastrous. They put me back under in short order, at least from the perspective of my memory.